Tonight, the FBI investigating a man's death after being detained inside an Alabama jail. His family alleges he was left naked on a cold cement jail cell floor for days.
Welcome to Unjustified, where we always cover the truth, the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, on an unbiased and sometimes very unpopular opinion. If you're not already a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe now and hit the notification bell, and that way you will receive all of our upcoming videos. Thank you so much for being here, and we do hope you enjoy today's video. On January the 26th, 2023, 33-year-old Tony Mitchell was pronounced dead at an emergency room that he was transported to by the Walker County, Alabama Sheriff's Department.
This video from January 26th shows officers at Walker County Jail putting Anthony Mitchell inside a patrol car bound for a hospital. Within hours, the 33-year-old was dead.
The emergency room coroner said that his cause of death is most likely due to hypothermia due to the circumstances upon his arrival at the hospital. His family are now seeking justice, and they have filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Walker County Sheriff's Department.
Now Mitchell's mother has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the county sheriff's office and jail staff, claiming video leaked from an officer inside contradicts what officials told the press, that Mitchell was alert and conscious when he left the facility. It goes on to allege when he arrived at the hospital, Mitchell's internal body temperature was 72 degrees. Adding, it is clear that Tony's death was wrongful, the result of horrific malicious abuse and mountains of deliberate indifference. The emergency room physician wrote in Mitchell's medical records that they believed hypothermia was, quote, the ultimate cause of his death.
This is alleging that Tony's constitutional rights were violated due to the 12-plus correction officers and nurses who stood by and laughed as Tony slowly died by freezing and starving, all the while being nude. You see, the lawsuit was filed by Tony's family, and it is 37 pages long. And it states in part that between January the 25th and January the 26th, Tony froze to death while in the Walker County Jail.
Mitchell was kept naked in a holding cell not meant to house inmates. No bed or toilet. Jail staff accused of being indifferent to Mitchell's deteriorating condition.
With the family attorney going on to say, quote, how does a man literally freeze to death while incarcerated in a climate-controlled jail and in the custody and care of correction officers, end quote. The emergency room doctor who treated Mitchell on the morning of January the 26th when he was taken in by the Sheriff's Department says, quote, I am not sure what circumstances this patient was held in while he was incarcerated. This is very difficult, with the rectal temperature being 72 degrees while someone is incarcerated in jail. And he also believes that hypothermia is the ultimate cause of his death. You see, the average body temperature is 98.6 degrees, and this would have a normal rectal temperature between 97.5 and 99.6. Now, when the body begins to lose heat faster than it can generate it, and once the body temperature falls below 95 degrees, hypothermia will begin to set in. Now, according to this lawsuit, Mitchell was removed from this cold environment. Likely, this was the jail's walk-in freezer in the kitchen. And this happened sometime after 4 a.m., after being placed inside the freezer before midnight the previous night. After finally being removed from the freezer, Tony was put into a cell totally unclothed. He remained there for at least another 5 hours before the police eventually transported him to the hospital. While Tony lay naked and dying from hypothermia in a concrete cell that early morning of January the 26th, there was numerous correction officers and even medical staff that was wandering around his cell, gawking in, looking at him as he lay suffering and slowly dying, and they offered him no medical assistance whatsoever. You see, any of these officers could have saved this man's life just simply by dialing 911 and asking for an ambulance, but no one done this. Now, there was one hero correction officer, and that would be Karen Kelly. Now, she was not working when Tony was dying naked on this cold concrete cell floor. However, when she did hear about his death, she decided to investigate it herself from the security footage from inside the command center of the jail. Now, this is when she discovered what truly happened to Tony. She recorded this footage on her own phone, Tony's limp body being transported by police hours after he had been tortured. She went on to share this footage with the police, the media, and ultimately Tony's family's lawyers. After it was learned that Karen did share this footage, she was promptly terminated from her job. So,
former acting supervisor is suing the Walker County Jail for wrongful termination here after she leaked that video. And I do want to say her attorney says, quote, she is scared and in fear for her life of what they may do to her.
On February the 14th, she filed a federal lawsuit against the sheriff's department, as well as the sheriff, Nick Smith, as well as some others. Her lawsuit claims that her First Amendment rights were violated by the retaliation against her after she shared this footage, which completely disproved the police statement that had been written after Mitchell had died. Now, 4 days after Tony died on January the 30th, the sheriff's department did release a statement saying that Tony was alert and conscious before being transported to the hospital. But the surveillance video that Kelly leaked showed that Tony was limp and unconscious while being loaded into the back of the police SUV. Now, I know some of you may not be real aware of this case or the situation, why Tony was even in jail. Tony Mitchell was arrested on January the 12th. He had shown up at his cousin's house, Steve Mitchell. He was showing some severe mental psychosis and he was in distress. Now, the psychosis that he was in was drug-induced. The lawsuit also states that his cousin Steve didn't even recognize him when he showed up at his home. He was even barefoot. Now, this is despite the fact that Steve had just seen Tony only 3 months prior, and this was at Tony's father's funeral. Steve described Tony as being very haggard and emancipated when he came to his home. He also went on to add that he had lost at least 100 pounds since he had last seen him only 3 months prior. So obviously he had gotten into this hardcore addiction. And from what I've read, methamphetamine was the problem. Okay, his cousin went on to say that Tony just kept telling him that he wanted to tell him a secret. And the secret is that his parents had hidden his stillborn baby brother in a box in the attic. Now, it is true that Tony did have a little brother, stillborn, long time ago. Now, while he was in this meth-induced psychosis, he literally started believing his little brother that was stillborn was being held in this attic in a shoebox. Tony was also trying to convince Steve that there was 2 portals inside the attic as well. One of these portals was going to lead them to heaven, but the other one would lead them to hell. So Steve continued to try to prove to Tony that there was no boxes, there was no portals in the attic. So when he just could not get Tony to understand this, he decided the best thing that he could do was just call 911. So he told the dispatcher that Tony was suffering from severe delusions, and he was pretty certain that it was due to the meth-induced psychosis. Now, according to the report by the Walker County Sheriff's Department, when they arrived at Steve's home, Tony immediately brought out a gun and he fired at least 1 shot at the officers. Then he ran away into the woods behind the house.
A Facebook post from the sheriff's office around the time of his arrest said Mitchell was first admitted to jail on January 12th as a pretrial detainee in custody for attempted murder. The post said he fired at least 1 shot at deputies after a family member asked officials to perform a wellness check, noting he might be a danger to himself or others.
A SWAT team was deployed, as well as scent tracking dogs and even a helicopter. Tony was found in a metal outside building. Officers used a flashbang to make entry into this building. When they brought Tony out, they noticed that he had painted his face with black spray paint. They later found out that the reason he did this was he believed that this black paint was going to save him from being lured into the portal of hell that he truly believed was in the attic. So anyway, Tony was arrested and charged with attempted murder for firing the shot at the police. Now, at the time of his arrest, he was malnourished and, of course, suffering this psychosis, and he had a severe drug addiction. Tony was not given any sort of medical attention by the sheriff's department whatsoever after they arrested him. Screenshots from the surveillance obtained while Tony was incarcerated clearly showed that basically the entire time he was being held in the pre-trial detention, he was completely naked and kept in a tiny isolation cell. This cell did not even have a bed or any other furnishings. There was only a small drain in the concrete floor that he could use to urinate in. The cell was bare cement. Basically, it was the equivalent of a dog kennel that didn't even have a mat on the floor for him to sleep on.
The lawsuit also claims Mitchell was tased, his false teeth removed, meaning he would be unable to eat. Yates said there is no medical condition or disease that would cause the body temperature to drop that low to 72 degrees.
He was also tased by the police. This caused his dentures to come out of his mouth. Tony could not eat without his dentures, so the officers picked his dentures up, took them from his cell, and just placed them in a Ziploc bag and placed them with his personal belongings in a locker. Tony's family say that because he was not capable of eating without his teeth, they also believed that he was not able to eat any sort of solid food from January the 15th until his death 11 days later.
Of looking on and chatting by Mitchell's open cell door, entertained as he languished naked and dying. It also includes screenshots alleging staff dragged him from a shower to the booking area.
So for 13 days, Tony lay in a filthy cement cell without solid food, without a bed, without a toilet, or even a thin sheet to lay on the floor to sleep on. Then at some point on the evening of January the 25th, jailers allegedly placed Tony in a restraint chair and put him in the jail kitchen's walk-in freezer and left him there unattended for hours. Now, I don't care how you look at that. That is inhumane, being placed in this freezer, and as you saw the photos of the correction officers, the nurse, I'm talking about over a dozen people walking around, looking in there, taking food out of the freezer, right? Seeing him in there nude, laughing. No, hell no. This is wrong. This is unjustified. I have reported on several cases in Alabama, my state, and I'm here to tell you something's got to be done. Justice for Tony Mitchell. Tell me what you think below. Share this video. If you don't want to share the video, grab one of the links below and share that link. This is not something that needs to be brushed under the rug, not known about. This is ridiculous. Imagine his family. Imagine his cousin that felt he had to call 911. Many of us have been in the situation that his cousin was in, right? It's like we get to the end of our rope. We just can't deal with anymore. So we think the best thing to do is try to contact an authority figure. They need some mental help, right? I can assure you, if Tony's cousin knew that this was going to happen, he would have just dealt with it the best way he could, which I'm here to tell you right now is hell. And this wrongful death lawsuit that this family has out there, I hope to God they win this, and I hope with everything in me that maybe some sort of justice. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, this is Unjustified.
And as we mentioned, we did reach out to the Sheriff's Department for a comment, but they have no response at this time. Both lawsuits remain very much ongoing.
Thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment below on your thoughts of this video. And until next time, this is Unjustified.